to our 6 o'clock Committee of the Whole meeting. I'd like to bring the meeting to order and ask the roll be called, please.
Lewis. Here. Bozeman.
Here.
Disharum. Here. Posthauser. Here. Park.
Here.
Reed. Here. Zawin.
Here.
That's all. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, hello everyone. We'll now bring the meeting into the public participation portion. And I'd like to say that if anyone wishes to address the board, you can please come up and sign in at this time. You have one? Okay. All right. Before addressing the board, I would like to remind you of our process. Per Board Policy 2230, we ask that when addressing the board, you please identify yourself and be brief. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. The speaker is asked to please conduct oneself with respect and civility towards others. Individuals less than 18 years of age are permitted to address the board if accompanied by his or her parent or guardian. The board typically does not engage in two-way conversations during the public participation of the meeting. Any follow-up response will be addressed by the administration at a later date. To be respectful of others and to protect confidentiality, complaints against individual students, staff members, or board members, either named or unnamed, shall not be orally presented to the Board of Education. Such complaints shall be put in writing, signed by a person or persons making the charges, and delivered to the Board of Education Secretary. At this time, I'd like to ask anyone who wishes to address the board to please come in. And if you haven't signed in, please do so, and then come to the podium. Please begin by stating your name and the topic that you'll be addressing.
All right. Hello.
Is it working?
All right. Hi. My name is Tom Haft. I am the parent coordinator for Dunlap High School lacrosse. So that's what I'll be discussing. All right. I'm coming to you today to respectfully disagree with the administration's position that lacrosse should not be funded in 2018. Dunlap Lacrosse was founded in the fall of 2011 as a club sport at Dunlap High School. As our club has evolved over the last 7 years, we've become very successful from a results perspective and developed into a benchmark program, not only in Central Illinois, but in Illinois in general. A few examples, in 2015, we finished 22-2 and won the Illinois High School Club State Championship. In 2016, we moved to the IHSLA and fielded both the JV and varsity team in the South Suburban Conference as a co-op with Richwoods High School. This conference is made up of schools such as Lockport, Orland Park, Minooka, and Lincoln Way. The IHSLA was founded in 1990 and currently is a league of nearly 100 schools, mostly in the Chicagoland area. The purpose of that is they have been advocating for lacrosse to become a sanctioned IHSA sport for the last 10 or 15 years. Dunlap moved to the IHSLA for two primary reasons: to improve the quality of competition that our kids play against and to set our program up to begin participation in the IHSA when it becomes a sanctioned sport. Last year, our varsity team completed the season with a 14-3 record. We ended up ranked 50 out of approximately 50 schools in our IHSLA division. We frequently beat competition by double digits, which in football terms is like winning 50-14 in lacrosse. We won the Marmion Cadet Challenge Tournament and advanced to the third round of the IHSLA playoffs. Last year, the IHSA announced that lacrosse would become a sanctioned sport in 2018, and our entire lacrosse program and the lacrosse community in general became very excited that the decision we made to migrate from being a local club sport to a IHSLA participant would be the best decision to set us up for our long-term success. In 2017, we are again participating in the IHSLA, fielding both the JV and varsity team. We have 29 kids registered. 23 are for Dunlap and 6 are from Richwoods. The mix is 12 freshmen, 8 sophomores, 4 juniors, and 5 seniors. We're about midway through the season. Both teams currently stand at 7-2, and again, our average margin of victory remains at about 50-14 in football terms, about 12 goals. We're currently ranked 11th out of 50 schools in the IHSLA. And as I mentioned, our JV team margin of victory is just as good, if not a little bit better than our varsity. So again, we have a system where we're successful and have continuing success. We also have a solid feeder program of lacrosse players into our high school program. Our youth program, which I see many kids here wearing these stuff are youth and a little small to be high school players. But that program is run in cooperation with Dunlap Rec, and we typically have 75 to 85 kids participating annually at the youth level, spanning U9 to U15. Typically, our players come to our high school program with several years of playing experience via the youth program, although we do welcome and encourage kids to our team that have never played lacrosse before. This year, we have 2 players playing lacrosse at a high school level for the first time. Another key point to make is lacrosse has made a difference in the post-high school direction of some of our players. In 2014, we had 1 player receive a college lacrosse scholarship. In 2015, we had 2. Last year, we had 1. This year, we have 5 seniors, 4 of which are getting college scholarships to play lacrosse at the next level. I received a comment from one of our parents that couldn't be here tonight on the impact of that. I'm quoting her statement. My boys have been with Dunlap Lacrosse since its inception. One was in 7th grade and the other in 8th. In that short time, they've seen the program from virtually nothing to being noticed throughout the country. No joke. Both of the boys obtained quite substantial scholarships from Illinois Wesleyan, and both of those scholarships were due to lacrosse. A few other points before I sit down are that we have been very happy with the support from Dunlap School District that they provided us over the years for lacrosse. They've given us a coaching stipend, bus transportation, great practice and playing facilities that other local and Chicagoland programs simply do not get. We've been held up as a positive example both locally and regionally to high school athletic directors and school districts and elsewhere in Illinois as a model of how lacrosse should be supported. When we have home games, you go to the turf and you see it. When you enter, there's professionally created banners celebrating our team. I don't know if you've been out there lately to see it. We use the concession stands. Both the scoreboard and video board are operating. We're playing music on the PA system. As a lacrosse parent and taxpayer, I feel extremely proud of what we have and what it says about our community and how we feel about lacrosse. I had one program tell me their school wouldn't even let them unlock the bathrooms at their field, let alone let them into the press box to use the equipment. But that's not the case here. Secondly, we are more than willing to work with the school district on investigating funding options to share some of the expense to make our program IHSLA by fundraising, also sharpening our pencil on the budgetary cost and work out how the co-op should be handled financially in the future with Richwoods. In other words, if the startup cost is projected at $30,000, maybe we can commit to do fundraising to raise some fraction of that. To be honest, that $30,000 estimate was an all-in estimate. It could probably be cut back with some agreements between our lacrosse program and the high school administration on what a streamlined budget could be. For example, the budget assumes 100% of all equipment is provided by the school. And frankly, lacrosse isn't like football. Every kid has enough equipment in their garage to field half a team themselves. I assume the school would need to provide helmets for concussion protocol reasons, but in my opinion, as a lacrosse parent, there's no reason that the school absolutely needs to buy every piece of equipment for the kid, like the rest of the pads and a stick, when he or she already has his own stuff and prefers to use their own stuff anyway. We simply have not been approached to discuss any of these options with the school district. To be quite frank, we were pretty blindsided by all this and what's happened in the last 24 hours. The only reason we found out that lacrosse funding for 2018 was on tonight's agenda was by luck someone told us about it. Finally, you might wonder why we can't wait until 2019 for all of this. The basic reason is it will cripple our program and all the gains that we've made over the last 7 years. If we go back to being a purely club program, the level of competition our kids would face will go down dramatically. There won't be really many teams that aren't IHSA that are available to play against at our skill level. Additionally, the benefits to our kids is getting noticed for college scholarship opportunities would be at risk when other kids they are competing against for those same scholarship opportunities are participating at sanctioned ISHA level programs. Thank you for listening, and I'd love the opportunity to work with district leadership on coming up with a solution that will work for everyone.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make a quick comment. I want to compliment Tom and his wife Sherry for stepping up as parent coordinators. When the Nelsons relocated, Tom and his wife have done a phenomenal job of keeping this, without missing a beat, probably even better than the predecessor. So kudos to Tom and his wife, Sherry.
Thank you. Do we have any other public participation? Okay, have you signed in, sir?
I have not.
Okay, if you could please sign in here at the desk. And thank you, sir, for your comments. Someone will be in touch with you. Okay.
Oh, may I have one other quick comment? I think I skipped over it in my angst, but I did want to mention that we have a very solid theater program with kids, and we typically have 75, did I say that, 75 to 85 kids participating in theater. Okay, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I capture that, because.
It's important. It's good, yeah.
Thank you, appreciate
I wrote
it.
it down.
My name is Paul Broadcorp. I have a son in Dunlap. He's on the lacrosse team. And I have two daughters who went through Dunlap, and they're gone and graduated and off on their own. I was kind of, I have not been here before, but I was hoping to hear some of the discussion because it was my understanding that lacrosse was going to get funded or band uniforms were going to get funded. Is that, can you nod or something and say yes or no, or that's a possibility?
They are both on the
If it's
agenda.
not, I can go sit down. That's what I'm talking about.
They are both on the agenda, and that will be part of the discussion that we will be having, yeah.
Well, then, I just want to say, I grew up in the band. My dad was a band director. I did 4 years of high school band, not here, but big band program. I was the band president my senior year. Then I went on to U of I, and I did 4 years of band. And my older daughter, Elizabeth, was in band for 3 or 4 years here, and my younger daughter was in band for 1 year here on the color guard. And I have been a band parent, and I have gone out and I've scooped up flags after the show, and I've pushed drums and all kinds of paraphernalia. And I know exactly how hard they work, and they work incredibly hard. And nobody could be more sympathetic to the band program than I am, because I have been there and seen it. But upgrading the uniforms for the band versus a new program for the lacrosse players, I can't in my own mind justify that. I can't, that does not even equate to me. And I just wanted to say it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to sign in at this time? Nobody else is coming up? Okay, yeah, if you want to come up and go ahead and sign in, then we'll have you kind of waiting.
I just have a couple of statements. And,
I'm sorry, sir, can you please state your name?
my name is Bob Lundell, 505 South Reference.
Thank you.
I have children in the Dunlap School District, one member on the lacrosse team. You all have an opportunity to allow somebody who's not tall enough to play basketball, somebody who may not be fast enough to play baseball, somebody who may not be big enough to play football. But you're considering taking that away from kids who can play lacrosse. Okay? These kids, this is the sport that they've chosen. This is the sport that they can play. You don't have to be tall. You don't have to be fast. You don't have to be big. Athletic. Where else can they go? Okay? Maybe they didn't start in the band early on like I did. Okay? I understand band uniforms are expensive. I went to Rock Island High School. Our band uniforms are 20 years old. We did a fundraiser for 5 years to raise enough money to buy new band uniforms. Okay? We understand that those things are expensive. We're talking about the youth getting outside and playing ready for the real world. Okay? And the ones that can't do football, the ones that aren't tall enough to do basketball, have another chance with lacrosse. It's a large roster. There's an opportunity for a lot of kids to play and to get outside and to be part of something. Don't take it away from them. Don't take away the scholarships by not becoming IHSA, because that's what you'll be doing if you vote that way tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Hussey. I'd like to echo my support as well for the lacrosse group and this opportunity to bring it into the high school. Every year that we've seen the lacrosse grow in the area, and it looks like a great opportunity to be able to provide this for the high school group and continue this as opposed to purchasing new outfits for the band group. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Jason Mitchell. I have 5 kids in the Dunlap School District, 4 boys, 1 girl. 4 play football, and I have 2 that participate in lacrosse, and a daughter that's in track and field and choir. I want to talk about the youth movement and the youth program of lacrosse. It started in Peoria, transitioned over to Dunlap, and I think that groundswell, you can see a lot of our varsity players this year are actually freshmen and sophomores that are participating at the varsity level. My children, my 13-year-old, I encouraged this year to play lacrosse due to the fact that we have a high school program. I have a sophomore that actually played on the JV and the varsity level. When my kids are participating in a high school sport, we look at college athletics. I was lucky enough this year to have 2 boys that are playing football that are going to continue on to play in college. I would not encourage my children to play a youth sport that they didn't have the opportunity to participate in at the highest level of high school. It's also one of the reasons that I chose to move to Dunlap from Broomfield, Illinois, was due to the athletic program that you had here that was also combined with the academics. So not participating at the IHSA level with lacrosse would be an absolute travesty, considering part of the program at the high school is to encourage the groundswell that's happened over the last 7 years. I mean, they've put in all the hard work. They've got the participation levels. They have 4 youth programs. They're constantly getting kids into. And again, as a parent, I had a first-year player that I said, go play lacrosse, because there's an opportunity for you at the high school. We've got to take this next step. Again, this community has done the work, so that's what I want to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jeff Shavanik. I recently moved here from Seattle, Washington, actually, and my son played lacrosse out there, and it was very popular. Moved here, relocated with work, and I was born and raised personally in Indiana, so it was basketball and baseball were the only 2 sports that were offered. We moved to Canada. My son started playing hockey. We moved to Seattle. He started playing lacrosse. So neither 2 of those sports were ever really offered or available at my age when I was young. Haven't seen him, haven't seen those sports. I wish it would have been an option. I would have loved to have the opportunity to at least try it. Lacrosse to me looked like a lot of fun. I played some with my son, who's not better than me, but it's a blast. I really enjoy it. I think if it comes down to, again, band uniforms or cutting the program, an entire program the kids play and enjoy, I don't know how you can make that decision to do with that and not offer the children the opportunity to at least experience that. When it comes to financing, my son and my daughter did dance. I mean, I divided it out, it was like $400 was the expected cost per uniform. My son's in traveling soccer, hockey, and lacrosse. I'm going to St. Louis this weekend for a hockey tournament. I guarantee you I'm going to far exceed $400 expenses. My traveling soccer expenses through the roof, hockey, crazy, lacrosse, I mean, all the gear, everything paid for 100%. Daughter's uniform, paid for a dance recital, over $100 all at once. So I mean, I have children, I support them, I sacrifice so they can do their activities. I'd hate to see an entire program get killed like it would be if that's the result.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Jason Shea. I'm at 1518 Grand Ridge, and I'm also the intern here and also director of Delaware High School. First of all, something that nobody has said yet. If there's an opportunity to fund both things, I would completely be in support of that. I'm not going to say anything negative about lacrosse. It's an amazing activity. One of my roommates in college had played lacrosse in the club leagues in the Chicago area, and he was an outstanding athlete and really loved it. But what I do want to do is defend our program because it's been attacked a little bit here. We are currently wearing band uniforms that are older than most of our students. And in a sport, there was equipment, uniforms that were as old as the students. It's probably time for new. So when we do get that lacrosse in IHSA, whether it's this year, next year, or when it does happen, I would hope that we would get new equipment over the 16 years for that. And we would just ask the same consideration. We're not asking for any consideration over lacrosse. We're not going to put ourselves above. We just want it all to be considered. Thank you all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, this concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. It will now move into information and discussion. And the first item we have, Mrs. Karen Beverland is going to present information regarding the outstanding budget items for 2017-18. Mr. Adrian is going to present some information as well.
Really what we wanted to talk about tonight is we have requests that were made that the board has not discussed whether to fund either all or none of the outstanding requests. Where we are at right now is the final stages of putting together the budget for the 17-18 year. And band uniforms and lacrosse were two requests that were made this school year that the board still needs to consider whether or not they will be funded funded in the 17-18 school year. And when I say lacrosse funded, I want to clarify that's not anything to do with the club of lacrosse as far as that goes. The way it's stated, no matter what happens here, we are just talking about adopting lacrosse as an IHSA sport. If that happens, great. If it doesn't, lacrosse will continue to be a club sport here at high school with the same support that it has always had. Unfortunately, we have $50,000 in the budget to pay for these items. It is not enough to cover both of them. The lacrosse is the numbers that we have based on what the district at this point knows what we would have to buy or need to buy for the cost of lacrosse is around between $30,000 to $35,000. Band uniforms have to go out for bid because of the cost of those. We're guessing they will cost probably around $75,000 to $80,000 to cover all of them. So the additional money that is not in the request that the band has made for uniforms, they will be picking that up through activity funds or music boosters or however else they raise the money to pay for that. So the conversation tonight is not about one over the other or which one's more important or less important because they're all equally important. It's about what is what we can do as a school district with the $50,000 that we have sitting out there to be able to do this. I know in the recommendation, and Scott, tell me if I speak for incorrectly. When we had the conversations, and the recommendation was to purchase band uniforms. That is because at that point, if we purchase band uniforms, we are maintaining the programming as we have right now, providing materials, uniforms for a program that already exists and has been provided for. adding lacrosse as IHSA is adding an additional program, which is okay if that's what the board chooses to do, and we can do that. But I think, we went through budget cuts 4 years ago, and we still have not put back our existing activities to what they were before the budget cuts. So all of our sports and all of our activities and all of our classrooms are operating on less money right now than they did 4 years ago, because we have not put that money back. We have not restored our libraries to back to the full staff we had beforehand. So I think that's where the recommendation of, if we're going to fund something, we should not fund something, bring something new or more. Lacrosse will continue as it is right now and continue to receive that support while we still have programs out there that are IHSA sports currently, and the board has been supporting and adding something new. It's just really difficult to do that when what we already have has not been put back to where it was before. Am I speaking
Correct.
okay
Yeah.
to that? Okay.
Great.
So that's just our information, but this was really a conversation because we've got to put the budget together, and I needed the board's insights and for you guys to have a discussion about what you would like to see as far as moving forward with this money.
Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're looking for tonight is a consensus from the board on whether to put the band uniforms out for bid. Because
Correct.
in order to get that process started, that needs to start here pretty quickly,
Yes.
right?
That's
And-
exactly right.
And then a discussion with the board of, do we leave lacrosse as a club or as an IHSA sport?
Correct.
No decision's going to be made tonight on that.
No.
Right, okay.
Exactly. No, so that's where we're at, because the band uniforms, if they go out, we have to do it, like I said, through a bid process. So the bids have to go out. There's time frames to wait and the amount of time to get band uniforms made so that they have them. We're already pushing
We don't want to make any assumptions on the
No.
priority of the board without having a discussion.
And the deadline to declare for the IHSA deadline for lacrosse for 2018 isn't until February of 2018.
Correct.
It's a spring sport, so moving from club to IHSA, you have to submit the paperwork by February of 18. So you have
But our funding needs to be there.
the
You need the
fund-
money, but that comes up now.
Correct.
Right.
Point being though, that if there is some type of creative way to work with the parents to fund some of the equipment costs,
Well,
there's time to do that.
can I just jump in a couple of questions? So I recall that back in October, Mr. Kreider presented the initial budget of the 30,000 back in October. I don't know if there was there wasn't much discussion, so the number of 30 is not a surprise. It's kind of, that's what caught everyone off guard. It was presented in October. It's going to be 30 grand for IHSA. And all of a sudden, we get this on the agenda that we're not going to fund it.
You're still
Potentially.
saying it's around 30,
We're still
35,000.
saying
Okay.
it's around 30 to 35,000 and not at all.
No, but I'm saying it was already presented once, and now it's just, the next thing we know, it's kind of, looks like it may be off the table to fund it. Secondly is, why would we not have met with the leadership of lacrosse in determining this decision administration made? Why the coach?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was discussed with the athletic leadership team, but I could be wrong about that.
A little bit. I mean,
But there isn't any lacrosse representatives on that, so
I
I'm asking
understand that.
specifically, why were they not, because I think Tom brought up some good points, there could be some creative financing. I even kind of mentioned this to Karen Beverlin in the past with some budget issues, but to just not sit down with them and go through what are the creative ways, can we reduce the expenses? I think that was a missed opportunity.
But I think, Brian, what we're looking for is just to know what the priority of the board. If the priority of the board is to add lacrosse or to continue to look for funding, absolutely, that's all we're looking
The
for.
point of this meeting tonight was not to determine whether it would or wouldn't be funded. We needed to know what the priorities of the board were. These are the two outstanding items that we have, whether we fund any of them, all of them. We just need to know what direction the board wants us to go. So this was not at all the way that this was what I expected this meeting to be about.
If the board says we want band uniforms, we want lacrosse, make it happen, we'll make it happen. I mean, that's, but we're adding a new program, and so we need to know that that's the consensus of the board.
Well, and I think just basically, when you just said the deadline, you know, like the timeline for this, we're looking at February.
Right.
So one of the questions that we as a board were asking the administration, do we know what our enrollment is? Do we have a crystal ball? And we still have 200 outstanding, you know, students that haven't responded. We don't know what the numbers will be, but certainly by the 6th day of next year, we're going to know exactly what our enrollment is and whether we're holding steady or declining, right? So the last time we talked about the budget, we were looking at the worst case scenario for what personnel needs would be, right? The teachers and things. We'll have a much better idea as early as the 6th day of August, where we can revisit this. You know, as you said, this isn't an either
But the
or,
budget's
right?
already passed then.
What?
The budget
No,
would already
February.
passed. The budget, the money is coming up.
But if there's additional funds and we.
But
that we
that's
haven't used.
if, that's not a guarantee. That's my issue, is
Absolutely.
that you're kind of kicking it down the road, saying, we'll see what happens down there. And if the enrollment does go up, then lacrosse is out, because we don't have the money for it. We passed the budget
Well,
coming up. We need the
teachers
funds
are-
to allocate.
I
it.
understand what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I want to say two things here too. When we talk about missed opportunity, to your point, these are two outstanding budget items that you're bringing before the board for consideration. This is in no way a final answer, period, in this meeting, right? Now that the subject has been brought up, now that you are aware that there are two outstanding budget items, now that we have all this good information from parents about the importance, now is the time where we will sit down and engage, and there'll be a response, and there'll be a back and forth to see if there's a possibility of making it happen. And I don't think it's a if, I think it's a when. And I think going forward, there's only so much money that we have to work with. And I think this very board sat down and we scrutinized some academic programs very recently in regards to what we would do. And so we're not going to do anything with athletics any different than we would do in academics, right? If there's so much money, we're going to spend that wisely. We're going to try to make sure that we can do as much for as many students as possible every year, right? So this is not a one-time thing. And the other thing I want to say is I think there's some misconception here. There's never, ever, as far as I'm concerned, or that I know of, there was ever any mention of ever doing away with lacrosse. Right. So as far as what you were saying about that Dunlap's been very supportive, that they're funding the buses, the coaches, that you've had outstanding support, that will continue, right, at that level. And so this is never an issue of removing funding or changing anything. To your point, Karen, this is a point of if we're adding a new program and taking on additional costs, or if we're going to continue to fund where we are. Right, now I understand that the outcry is to move it forward, and I think we would all agree that that sounds like the positive thing to do. But going, for the sake of this meeting, and I think you just need a direction as far as the uniforms right now, because if you're going to put them out to bid, which is still us saying that, hey, there's some money there, we want to bid and see how much there is, and it's not if or, and the amount of money that's available is not going to fully fund either of these two items. There's still going to be a lot of additional work that's going to have to take place from the booster clubs, the parents, the kids. So, I just want to make sure everybody knows that it's not that we're choosing one group or over the other.
Well, I'm just still confused. The recommendation I read for tonight my issue was that administration was recommending to not fund lacrosse for the IHSA, but to fund the band. Just let me finish. So my issue was, why didn't we sit down with lacrosse prior to administration giving the recommendation and say, look, here's what we're up against. What do you think this $30,000 number? Can we shave this off? What are some things we can do, as opposed to just having administration put out something without talking to the key stakeholders that are running the program?
But we have stakeholders in the district that want to have wrestling, correct, too?
Yeah.
That's not on the agenda for tonight.
No.
I'm talking about this
Yeah.
right now. This issue tonight, we can talk about wrestling later.
Yeah, well, actually, I had a phone call on my way into the building from a parent who's been very involved and has talked to Mr. Kreider for years about wrestling. And
But
so
that's not
when
on
we,
the agenda
but when we start talking about new programs, you have to holistically look at everybody who's out there. And I get it, the wrestling people are not here because they weren't on the agenda.
I'm just saying, you're saying
but-
it's okay not to include, I just want to know, you're saying it was okay not to include lacrosse in that decision? That's all I'm asking.
Everybody needs to be included in all decisions.
Okay.
And this would be the time that I would hope that the administration would engage with you, sir, in all the effort that you put into this program to trying to see if there's a creative way to make it work. Because ultimately, that's what we all want, is to make it work. But what I'm saying is that obviously you guys can imagine, right? Everybody is coming at us from all directions for their program, right? And so wrestling has been kind of bounced around for, I don't know, a decade? And there's tons of kids who want to go that direction, and it's been brought before and it's been bounced in and out. So I'm just saying that we have to be, responsible to all of the parents and all of the students, and we have to have everything laid out. And that's what ultimately we want, is we want everything laid out. Now, we only have 2 items before us today that are on the agenda, and so that's what we're going to focus on, but holistically, there are other things that are out there as well. Now, for this batch of money, for the decision that we need to make tonight, it was the recommendation of the administration at this time to move forward with the band uniforms so that you can go out for bid. Is that correct?
And not lacrosse. That says it in the document.
I think the concern
It's not just one recommendation, Dawn.
And
It's saying we're going to do band and not lacrosse. That's specifically what it says.
That's the concern, being that if we would go forward with band uniforms, that lacrosse would totally be left out. And there was a gentleman who, when I was thinking about this today, because number one, I think in a school we want all our kids to be active in whatever sport, whatever activity that gets them out of bed every single day. And you were absolutely right, not everyone is that tall to play basketball. So if we find, a spot for everybody, it's just better. And when there was something in here about band being the part of the culture of Dunlap, and I get that, like football, but it's been here forever. It's had time to develop, and who's to say lacrosse can't be that? And so we want to find. Personally, I would like to find a spot for that. So if there is a way, because they're right about money, it's tight, and with the state of Illinois being what it is, I don't know if athletics will ever be fully refunded. I don't know if academics will ever be fully refunded or fully funded again. So if we can meet the needs of, the majority of our students, if we can work together somehow to divide the pot. I know in hockey we always had used gear sales and it's handed down and switched, and I understand the band uniforms, I get it, but if you can sit down and there can be a way to make it both work, I just think it's better for the district as a whole.
And if that's what the board tells us that they do want us to do, this meeting, this conversation was really supposed to be about the consensus of the board on whether or not we should even move forward with the bid for the band.
I think we should move forward on addressing them both, and I don't think it should be band or lacrosse.
Yeah, Karen is absolutely right. When this was just an informational item, so by no means was this going to be a vote tonight, but just a healthy discussion. We're happy that everybody came out because now we can hear, what's on the mind of community, and we can work.
I have a comment too when you're finished. When is the deadline? If you were to put them out for bid?
The deadline for the band uniforms to get them, we would need to put them out for bid within about the next week, because they have to be out for 2 or 3 weeks before, and then the bids would have to be brought back to the board for approval, and then the band uniforms have to be made, which is about a 2-month process from my understanding.
Okay, because I'm going to speak from both perspectives here. I had 3 kids that were in the band, okay? I have a collegiate athlete currently as well. As I did some research on the band, and I think what we do here as a school board is for the entire students. It's for lacrosse, it's for band, it's for everything. Academically, everything's what we're looking at. But as I did some research just for the band, we have about 170, 180 kids in the school that are in the band program, music program, just the marching band, I think, alone, and the directors can attest for that too. What I would like to see is how we could do this and make this happen. You've got band uniforms that, and I see Mrs. Lewis over there, that are 17 plus years old. We're replacing zippers. We are sewing. We're doing everything for that. If it's an athlete, if it's let's say football, let's just say a sport, how often are those replaced? And maybe you can tell me.
Every 2 to 4 years, depending upon the program.
If we look at Morton, we look at Limestone, we look at, I'm looking at my list here, Metamora, Pekin, the ones that we are constantly competing against in the band, they have new uniforms every 7 years. And I asked, what's the average life of these? And we know this because we repair them, we wash them now, it's 8 to 10 years. So if we can collectively come together, and to Brian's point, figure this out, how we can do what's best for everyone. You know, I think we have to look through that, but like I said, you know, the band competes all fall, we go everywhere. We have a marching band event that brings in thousands of dollars every year that we've used to purchase trailers, equipment that we need. And I think every sports and booster organization does the same thing. So that's where I'm at. You know, if we only have a week, I mean,
3 weeks.
3 weeks. I know it's going to come back to us, but I think we need to determine that. I see a $70,000 number here. I don't know what it's going to cost for band uniforms. That's been 16 years ago. So could it come in much less than that? You tell me. I don't know what we should anticipate.
What happens if it goes out to bid, just to give time for everyone to talk and to try to formulate a plan, and then you decide, well, you know, we're not going to do the band uniforms. Just as an example.
And Beth, that's exactly what we're looking for.
That's exactly what we're looking for.
That's all we're looking for.
Going out for the bids for uniforms does not obligate anybody
Exactly.
to pay for anything. It just tells us to move forward. I don't want to spend my time or staff's time or the vendor's time or the band director's time getting information put together for a bid if the board has zero interest in doing uniforms.
If the board doesn't want to do band uniforms,
I don't
Karen's
think
not going to
that's what,
spend her
I
time
think
doing it.
what I would like to see is look at a way to finance both of the projects.
And you can't do
By
the
working with lacrosse, and I'm not saying the 30 number, but that could be reduced. You could talk about participation fees, there'd be ways to have some meetings to figure out what that number is, and what's the delta, and can we make that
But as a
happen?
worst-case scenario, could we have the option, when it comes to the bid, to make the decision? If the worst-case scenario is we can only afford one, can we be able to make that decision without making the band decision first?
All we need to know, you're not committing to the band uniforms, you're committing to us putting them out for bid.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to assume it's okay with the board for us to be out getting bids on something that 7 people have no interest in doing.
But we reserve the right to say.
Absolutely, we can reject the bid.
Yes, we
Yes.
can reject it. We're
And
not tied.
if that's the way you direct us to go, then we can sit down and get hard numbers for lacrosse. I'm still of the mindset, though, of funding the current programs we have, bringing those back to the level they were at. We hear that all the time from our coaches and sponsors, bringing those levels back before we add something new. Lacrosse, it's interesting. I was actually on the board, IHSA board, when we decided to add lacrosse, and it floundered there for the number of schools wanting to fully commit to an IHSA sport, because no school district wanted to have the liability and the extra expense because the state was cutting all the funding. When the survey went out in early 2016, 80 schools said, we asked the schools, would you sign on and be an IHSA sport if we offered it? And 80 schools said yes. We were one of those schools. Morton was one of those schools. Washington was one of those schools. Washington and Morton have rescinded that agreement. The $30,000 number is not something we made up. Washington and Morton, Bloomington also came up with that number independently. Now, those are soft numbers. Those are ballpark figures that we fund anything, like you mentioned, Brian. There's not a lacrosse player that's serious that probably has a school stick, correct? They all have their own stick. They all have their own.
2 or 3 of them in the garage.
Right, you're probably per kid. I totally
Some
understand.
of them
It's
are
like,
eBay.
it's like baseball and softball bats. No one has a school bat anymore. They all have their own. So you could sit down and get hard numbers. There's still going to be reconditioning of pads that we're going to have to follow, and there's still going to be expenses that we can't avoid. Maybe you can creatively fund those. I don't know. But I do know Washington, Morton, Bloomington, Champaign, they are withdrawing this year, and they're playing it by ear. They're pretty confident they're going to move forward in 19, but they want to see what happens. We had conversations today with the IHSA, and there's several schools in the suburban area that are kind of like a pact. If one of them joins the IHSA, the other 5 or 6 will. They may or may not either. They want to see, they really don't want to do it as a school, but they don't want to not have that competition either, because as you know, if you're an IHSA school in lacrosse, you cannot compete against a club school. So the belief is, talking to Matt Sherlock, who's the director of lacrosse for the IHSA, that there will still be a significant number of schools that don't jump on board the first year because they want that wait and see attitude, but they feel that that number will definitely increase in 19. So again, and I'm glad you clarified, no one's saying not to cut an activity. We're not saying to cut an activity. It's just committing to that full funding of an activity when we have current programs that are reduced in funding and we have a current program that needs a desperate need of equipment.
So are you saying that perhaps other districts, everyone is like us, they're just waiting for someone else to pull the plug?
There's a lot. Now, as you know, there's diehard lacrosse schools that are all in and they've committed. But there's also a significant number of those who are just dipping their toe in the water and seeing where it's at.
But, you know, with what Tom mentioned, Scott, our program has developed so much and is so competitive. The local club teams aren't really competition for them. And we've got a lot of young talent coming up. And then if the schools up in Chicago that were in the league now go to IHSA, that's all we're really left with. And these group of kids that, you know, some are going on to D1 this year, and there's other kids with, you know, ambitions to do that, they're going to be sitting there trying to figure out if we're going to play these other local schools that aren't really competitive with them right now.
Yeah, and talking with Washington, they're kind of in the same similar situation.
Well, they're not competitive with us.
Yeah.
They're not.
Well, I think they'd like to be. And I
Well,
think,
no, but right now I'm saying they're not.
Right,
At
their
the
mindset
level that
is-
this program has just went like this, and now we're ready to go to the next level with some of these kids. And that's, I think, what the parents in here today.
It's been a pretty
Paul,
impressive
sorry.
beginning, so.
Paul, you have something to
How
say?
much we have supported the lacrosse program so far?
To support the lacrosse program, we pay the volunteer coach and then what we pay for transportation to Panama.
Okay, not
To get
really
them back and
much.
forth. Not very much.
Okay.
Most- The majority of it is paid for by the parents student club.
So it is interesting you put the two items today, but like I think you mentioned that, so we're looking kind of 100K total. So, but is that the one that, I think you mentioned a little bit that maybe there's other priority, maybe we not funding it? Is this two program is the top priority before we make a decision?
These are the only budget requests.
These were the budget requests that were brought to the administration,
It is-
and
it is
we're
required.
bringing to you for direction on how you want us to move forward.
So, but if you approve 100K, for example, then you would put this 100K for these two programs
What was the
above
question?
all the others that we
Sorry, I didn't hear.
could fund more? Like why it's kind of interesting to put these two programs kind of matching together, but
One or the other.
totally other things, like you mentioned the other program.
Or
other-
library and.
like-
And that's why we wanted to have a discussion.
That's right, so.
Yeah.
I mean, can we take a look at the entire list of we could fund among, I mean, besides these two, plus maybe there's more that we may not discuss.
And I guess back to Brian's point, if we're gonna do that, I would wanna start sitting down with, parents, teachers, students, just to see the things we cut, or new things, and what are the priorities. I think that's if the board is giving us a direction to start bringing things back, I think that's probably a bigger discussion than what we can do before May.
Well, I think there's all kinds of creative things you can do. You can look at the schedule. Maybe basketball doesn't need a new uniform every 3 years. I don't know. I have no idea, but maybe. And I know cheerleading, you're responsible for paying a pretty hefty amount of, that uniform. And I think everyone's willing to chip in and pay their share in order to see their program survive.
And we can have these conversations, that's not a problem at all, I don't think Scott has an issue having the conversations, but what the board needs to understand is, and it's fine, but if we move forward and we put anything in as an IHSA sport, or we add any program, what we agree to today with who is involved doesn't necessarily mean that in 5 to 10 years, that same agreement is going to exist, and the school district will be stuck with the bill. So, and if the board is.
I'm not
Sorry, I
following.
don't understand
I
what
don't
you mean.
follow that.
If we work with the lacrosse program right now for equipment and the parents are willing to pay costs and all of those things, that's an agreement that we have right now, but in 2019-20 or 2020-21, the same parents aren't there. And we have another activity that the school district has to pay for.
Well, then I think we sit down and have that discussion.
Yeah, I think there's ways to look at it. I mean, I think most probably here play travel lacrosse. We're spending $700 over the summer, so it could be the activity fee for lacrosse is higher. I'm not saying that right now, but there are options that we haven't even explored that could be potential funding for this.
Absolutely.
And those are things we've talked about within the office. We're really just looking for a direction from the board
So
of,
if you want us to.
are these two things a priority? And we
Okay,
will make it
so-
happen.
So my vote is both.
Thank you.
And I think I think that's the consensus of the board, if I'm understanding it correctly. So with that,
We will make it happen. We will be back to make it happen. We just need to know what your priorities are. We do not want to speak for you.
Right, and I think holistically, to your point though, we need the full numbers for long term,
Yes.
going forward. We need the reality of what it'll be, in 5 years if the school is fully investing into the program, because we will have kids come on that may not be able to afford that extra fees, and it will be an IHSA sport, and we will be, it's public school, we will have to cover those costs. So we need to be prepared for that. And I think everybody's in agreement that you can go ahead and get the bids, just so you can have that information, to have the numbers, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we were gonna go forward on
Everybody
both
else?
fronts.
Both,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, so
I'm for
Alright.
both lacrosse and band.
Lacrosse and band, here.
So you would go ahead and get the bids?
Yes.
And you'll bring back all the numbers and all the information that's necessary. Is that all you need for right now?
That's all we need.
Okay.
That-
All right,
that's
thank
it.
you so much, everybody, for that long discussion. Our next information item that we have 9 minutes to do is information regarding bond refinancing. Karen, so if you could please speak quickly.
Thank you, so easy. The Series 2007 bonds that we have out right now.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The 2007 bonds that we have out right now are callable on April 1st. And what we have is an opportunity to refinance those bonds for the last 3 years of the remaining 3 years on those bonds with Morton Community Bank for a savings of $164,000. The number in the information item that you have in front of you is a little bit less because the bank changed the numbers on me yesterday. With the way that the money has to be put in. This will, so basically over the next 3 years, it will save the taxpayers pretty much between $50,000 to $55,000 a year on average, for a total of about $164,000. So
Excellent.
that's
No brainer.
no,
Right.
And it's
but
the
I wanted
same
to make
term,
sure I
it's the same
asked-
amount of time, right?
For the exact same amount of time.
Yeah.
And there are fees that are involved as far as for the lawyers that have to draw up the paper, and the bank has, Morton Community Bank wants to work with us very, very badly. They sharpen their pencil a lot to get to this. So, and it's nice. I think it's exciting to do it with Morton Community Bank and do it in the local community. So, I just wanted to make sure I answered all of your questions. I will have the paperwork and the resolutions to be approved and everything at the May board meeting.
Very well done, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so
Super,
much
yeah.
for your work on that. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
And your upcoming work.
What?
And your upcoming work.
I know,
Yeah.
and that's like
And that's what we needed, too.
$164,000.
All
We
right.
were talking about 50.
No, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mrs. Beverly, Mr. Adrian, thank you very much. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second. All right, thank you, Beth, and was that Karen? Yes. Thank you, Karen. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. All right, you've got about, what, 6 minutes or so?